Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining us, and the people who are watching virtually, hello, welcome. As Christina mentioned, my name is Lena Jennings, and I get the privilege and the honor of working with Cinnamon Girl as part of their Travel Girl organization. And just a little bit about Cinnamon Girl. Cinnamon Girl is a leadership development organization for girls of color that was started in 2001. And at Cinnamon Girl, we believe that every single girl is destined for greatness. And oftentimes it takes a little bit of cultivation to help bring out that greatness inside of a girl. And we do that through 4 separate cohorts. We have a reading cohort for young girls of color starting at the age of 8 to help them read books by female authors of color with female main characters who are centering these stories to have multifaceted views of what girlhood is in this day and age. We have a writing cohort where the girls go through a 7-month cohort and really intensive masterclass training on how to write. How do you tone your voice and use your voice to craft stories? And at the end of it, the girls become published authors, and we feature their stories at the Bay Area Book Festival every year, and it is just this amazing thing. Then we have Entrepreneur Girl, where we help girls start businesses. How do we have female leaders of color who are starting their businesses and thriving? And at the end of it, there's a pitch competition, and we provide seed money for their companies. And then finally, if I'm not biased, my favorite of all cohorts is the travel cohort. And this travel cohort exposes girls to distance and difference. And for me, what kind of brings about this and why it is so important to me, when I studied abroad in Madrid, Spain, my host mom had this quote on her wall, and this is why we do all of our traveling. And this quote, it says, "We travel because we need to, because distance and difference is the secret tonic to creativity. When we get home, home is still the same, but something in our minds has changed, and that changes everything." And that is the epitome of why we travel, why we spend so much time and effort bringing our girls across the world, seeing different facets of how to live, how to work, how to love, how to experience life, because it's so important to get outside of your bubble and outside of your experience. And so that's why I'm really excited to bring up Leah Williamson, a junior at Berkeley High, and Chariot Waddell, a senior from Phoenix, Arizona, to talk through how their experiences shifted and changed as a result of traveling with the Commonwealth Club to the Deep South, to states like Mississippi and Alabama and Memphis, and following the tracks and the paths of civil rights leaders that are enabling the 3 of us, 3 young Black girls, to stand up here today to talk to you all about their stories of resilience and courage and overcome, and help hopefully carry on the legacy that fearless leaders before us have sacrificed. And so, Chariot and Leah, come on up. Hi.
Hey. Hi.
Hi. Okay. Say hi to the people online.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Grandma.
Hi, Grandma. Okay, so we're really excited. Tonight we get to talk about the experience that you both went on in October. And we have some fellow travelers in the audience as well who took the trek with Leah and Chariot here. So hello to you as well. But for other people in the room and online who did not get the privilege and honor to go on this trip with the Commonwealth Club, I want you to share a little bit about what that experience entailed. And we have a slideshow to help kind of guide along some of the experiences. But I want to just share this quote because I think it really captures the importance of this journey. This was, we went to the COFO meeting hall, one of the first 2 days of the trip. And Bob Moses, who was the program director of COFO at the time, he had this quote on the wall. It says, "When you're in Mississippi, the rest of America doesn't seem real. And when you're in the rest of America, Mississippi doesn't seem real." I am a California girl through and through, up and down, left and right. It did not seem real. it did not seem real. It was such a drastically different experience. So share a little bit about the trip, what you guys saw, what you experienced, and walk us through all that it entailed.
Yeah. Okay. So the trip was a week long, and it was focused mostly on deep analysis of the civil rights movement. And we got to travel to places like Jackson, Mississippi, Montgomery, and all these different places, and get to really experience like what it was like to be living during that time, during like where the civil rights movement. We also we also got to talk to a lot of the vital voices. We got to talk to Elizabeth Eckford, one of the Little Rock Nine, Hezekiah Watkins, the youngest freedom rider who actually ended up giving us a ride to our destination, and Carolyn McKinstry, a 16th Street bomb survivor. So very powerful, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so these photos, what is this? Give us a kind of, what is this? What surrounded this experience?
Okay, so this was like a cotton field, and this was like basically what we were mainly seeing, like, you know, traveling through the South.
Because you drove through the South, from city to city on a bus.
And we actually like ended up stopping on the side of the road. And this is like kind of like the field that we went inside, and it was really an interesting experience to know that like this was, you know, how where some of our ancestors like were, right? And like just like being here, I don't know, it was really it's different like hearing about it, but then like actually like, being in the field, it's just a different experience.
Yeah. I can imagine.
For sure. So this was the Stax Museum in Memphis, one of my favorite places we ended up going to, and we really got to see Black culture and the Black music culture especially, and seeing how that has really helped us to where we are now. Yeah, it was really beautiful.
Yeah, okay. So this next one.
Okay, so this next one, this is Sylvester Hoover, and basically he was just a resident of Baptist-Town, and he like really just showed us like so many different things. Like in Baptist-Town, he now owns like a lot of like the property in Baptist-Town, but Baptist-Town was known for being a place where like all the sharecroppers lived, and actually the movie The Help was filmed in this town.
His wife also helped cook all the meals in the actual movie, and we got to eat her delicious meals, and
They were so good.
amazing.
Southern cooking.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! Don't even get me started. This is
guys in
us.
Baptist-Town.
In Baptist-Town. Yeah. Also us.
You guys are cute.
Okay, so this right here is like the 9-foot bag that they would have to fill with cotton 2 times a day. And I don't know, it was just like crazy to see. I really did not know, like going into this trip, I did not know it was that big, and they would have to carry this like with them throughout the fields in the, like Leah was saying, like in the hot Mississippi sun. So it was just really crazy to, you know, see how Mr. Sylvester had to fill this bag 2 times a day when he was sharecropping in Baptist-Town.
Yeah. This is one of the stops that Sylvester Hoover ended up taking us to. He took us on many stops. It was really great. He was an amazing tour guide. Yeah.
And then this,
sorry.
Wait, this is also where Stokely Carmichael gave his like famous speech, like Black Power speech, where he kind of coined that term.
So one of the places we actually ended up going to is the Emmett Till Interpretive Center, and this is a recent statue that they had put up of Emmett Till. This was a very emotional day for all of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then this right here is Bryant's grocery store. This is where the story of Emmett Till starts, where basically he allegedly had whistled at a white woman and was afterwards like really he was beaten and just like disfigured because of, you know, this action. And this is like the store where the Bryants had like accused him, and basically Mr. Bryant never got acquitted for like what he did. So
They're also putting this place up for sale actually, and they're asking millions and millions of dollars for it, which I found quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. This right here was where the Selma March began, and it was like the church where it began, and we got to just like see like the outside of the church, and they had a lot of like different memorials like surrounding it and stuff like that. And it was just like a small stop on the tour, but I think it was really powerful to see like this is like just like I can imagine all the people standing here ready to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Mm-hmm. I think it was also really beautiful because throughout the trip we went to many churches, and we really learned that a lot of the power and the hope that they got was through the church, and that's where all the organizations started, and it was so interesting to see. So this was actually, we ended up getting a kind of conversation before going to the Central High School. This was also a very emotional day for all of us.
This right here is Elizabeth Eckford, and behind her is a lady who like basically they ended up becoming like, you know, friends and stuff like that. But in this picture you see her like just like the hate that she had for her. Elizabeth Eckford was I believe 15 at the time, and Elizabeth Eckford actually like had made that dress, and by the time like this was her first day at Little Rock High School, and by the time that the day was like it had only been a couple hours, and her dress was just soaked with spit of like the people just spitting on her dress and stuff like that.
It was incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's the bench, the audience said.
Yeah. So this right here, yes. This right here, you see the reporter in the back, but he was actually protecting her. They were trying to like hurt her as she was sitting there. So the reporter tried to like protect her and comfort her. But as you can see, Elizabeth Eckford like was alone because she didn't get the memo that they were actually meeting at Daisy Bates' house instead of at the school. So she ended up coming alone, and thankfully like she had an ally to protect her, but you know, she was actually crying, and she even told us how she was thankful that the glasses were hiding her tears.
This is Central High in person. Very beautiful school, actually. This is us with Elizabeth Eckford.
She's still alive.
Yeah,
She's still alive
still
to
alive.
tell this story today. It just puts it into perspective. It's not that long ago.
yes.
She also talked about how it was actually very hard for her to originally tell her story, and I'm just really thankful that we got to experience that, and she was so open and vulnerable with us, because it was a very vulnerable conversation. So yeah, here's another photo.
So this right here is the Lorraine Motel, and this was where Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered, and in his hotel room. But I think it was really beautiful how they had transformed like that just dark place to where like one of our greatest civil rights leaders was shot into like a museum to really just like educate like everyone on like just a lot of things of the civil rights movement, and just you know, they had preserved his room so you could really see like what happened, and like kind of like, I mean, it was an ordinary day, and just like he was assassinated, but you could see like, you know, he had a coffee cup on his stand, and it was just you could really see like the like what was going on during this day.
Now this is the Slave Haven Museum. This was also a very heavy stop, and this was the house of an abolitionist who
Jacob Burkle was
Yeah, sorry.
yes. And he basically had like this was a stop on the Underground Railroad,
Yes.
and he like protected the slaves inside this house. And there's like an underground there's an underground like space under the house where he would like the slaves would crawl under this like it was really small too, like this small part of the house in order
pitch
to like,
black. Also.
yes, oh my gosh, to protect themselves from, you know, the slave masters. So this right here is a painting that was in the Slave Haven, and I actually was able to like purchase it, but it's just kind of showing like, you know, when they were on the ship coming from, Africa to America, a lot of them did not make it, and a lot of them were, thrown into their bodies were thrown into the water, right? And it shows them kind of like being liberated in their souls, being able to come out of the water, and just they found kind of like freedom in death in a way.
I want to just pause there and add something, because Jayla, who also attended the trip, said that from the Slave Haven Museum, that they were talking about the route that the ships took from Africa to the Americas, that there are sharks still swimming along that same route to this day, because they're so used to, it's in their DNA to know that to find bodies along that route.
Yeah.
Dead bodies of slaves being thrown overboard to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
This was one of our many endeavors when we had time to kind of wind down. And so we were in Memphis, and we really wanted to feel Memphis for what it's known for, and that's its blues and its jazz. And so this was our like night of enjoyment. And so yeah.
Night of enjoyment continued.
Yes, night of enjoyment continued.
Yes.
There was so much live music and so many amazing musicians. We just danced the whole night away, basically.
And this was on Beale Street, which is like a really popular street in Memphis, known for its music. But honestly, like I think that, at least for me, like it was a nice break from like just like the the sadness from the day of like learning about all this like really dark like history. But it's just kind of like it was like a light moment that we had like fun together. Yeah.
And we were still very much celebrating Black culture and Black history, and that also felt really amazing as well.
So this right here is the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This is where the Selma March, they walked across this bridge right here. And I don't know, like it was interesting. Like I thought that like the river, there's a river like under the bridge, and it's like it was so beautiful like to see all the trees and stuff like that. But just knowing that like they had marched across the bridge, it was really powerful, because it's like while we like kind of like look like kind of like big in this picture, the bridge, like we're so small compared to like how big the bridge like kind of was. So it was interesting to put that into perspective. Yeah.
No, for sure. Also, the event Bloody Sunday happened here, and
What's Bloody Sunday?
Bloody Sunday is basically whenever they were on the march and they were stopped by a lot of the government, and it just basically turned into this like mass murder, basically. And so I think also standing on here held so much weight, because we knew so many lives were lost here, and even the lives that got to leave that day left with so much trauma and things that they can never, fully recover from.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This right here, this was at the museum in Jackson, Alabama, I believe. Yes. And it was basically you had the museum, and then you had this like memorial for all the people who were lynched in every single county across the South, and their names were like put in these little like plaques, as you kind of could see in the background. But this was one of the kind of like sculptures kind of like they had at the beginning before walking inside. And I don't know, it was really like there were so many names of just like the lynchings that happened, and it was powerful to that like at least like they remembered them, but still like it was so like just the dark history behind that, all the names of the lynchings.
For sure. This was also in the same place, and behind them is a few of the massacres that were recorded. There were a lot of massacres that also weren't recorded, and they made sure to talk about that as well, which is absolutely
Okay. Thank you for that overview. That was like a good overview of the experience. Thank you. Okay, so as you all got a small sliver and a taste of it, it was a little heavy of an experience, and that was just a fourth of the pie. There were still so many pieces and elements of that experience that they did not get to cover. So I would love to hear from you both, like what was the most emotional or impactful part of the trip? And what did it bring to you to see some of these civil rights sites come to life?
Do you want to go first, Leah?
I can go first. I would say our first few days in Mississippi. I'm originally from Tennessee, and so I'm very used to like being around Southern culture, and I think it just hit so close to home. And like stories that I had heard from my grandparents or people that I knew, I was seeing it in person. I was seeing all these fields, and it just felt so like it was a lot. I'm honestly still digesting it, if I'm being honest, but yeah.
I think for me, like the most impactful part was going to Sumner Courthouse, which where was Emmett Till's trial. And I think like it just really resonated with me because Emmett Till, like I have cousins that are his age. I have like a little brother, and it's just like knowing that the story of Emmett Till, of like he was like literally 14 years old, and like I saw the picture of like what his body he was unrecognizable after like what they did to him, right? Just because of he allegedly whistled at like a white woman, and it was just sitting in that courthouse, like we were in the jury seats of the courthouse, and like I don't know, walking in, like I don't know what it was, but like I could just still feel like something, there was still something like embedded inside that courthouse, like of like the injustice that they did to him, and like how they didn't give him justice, and they didn't acquit his murderers, and they didn't Mamie Till, like they just like they had like literally a 2-hour break during the trial, and like they just like went to go get sodas, like they really did not care about his life. And I don't know, it just really resonated with me, like what happened to Emmett Till. So that was a really powerful part of the trip for me.
And also the apology that they gave out.
Yeah, we dissected the apology like during the trip, and it really wasn't even an apology, it was a statement, and they didn't really apologize. There was no accountability for what they did to him.
From Caroline Bryant's husband, or who gave the apology?
I think it was the city.
Yeah, it was the city. It was really unclear like who really wrote it, and like there was no accountability to like, they were just kind of like, yeah, like this happened, but you know, what was the actions that they were going to take to like resolve that? Like there was really no action behind their apology.
Yeah. So knowing how heavy this experience was, and you said you felt the spirit of the courtroom and the injustice walking into those sites, and you did that every day for 8 to 10 days, back to back. And so knowing that, the heaviness of it, you have to have some space to just digest and understand and process. And so what I know about the trip is that there was someone to help you process and to dissect and discuss what happened in the context of the group with the other travelers. What were some of those conversations like, and what did those bring you?
I think like, so Robert Greene, he was like kind of helped us, guide us through this experience. After each day, we would have like a conversation with him and the rest of the travelers on the group, and just kind of like dissect like what really went through, what happened, like what went into like what we saw that day. And I think that like, I don't know, the conversations were really insightful. Like it was just like, because I think that it unified us in the end. And there was like, you know, a generation gap, but also like you know, a racial gap. But at the same time, we were still able to come together and really just like discuss like each day and like go through like what had happened. And like each day we would discuss it in a different way too. Like one day we may have analyzed like a certain quote, or another day we may have like listened to a song in the beginning and kind of like got into a mindset of like, you know, like trying to like dissect like what really happened that day. So there was different ways we did analyze it, not just conversation, but it was really helpful, like having Robert Greene as our moderator and just like going through that conversation. Yeah.
There was a lot of space that was made for us, especially me and Chariot, because we were the youngest.
Yes.
We're also African American, so this is our history. So of course we were feeling this, and I just felt that that was really beautiful that they gave us that space. And I think also, as Chariot was saying, something that really brought us together was the fact that we were all learning.
Yes.
And it didn't matter the age which you were or how much experience you had in life. We were all learning something new. And also we were learning hard things too. So obviously that's going to bring you closer together. And those conversations really helped with that. And yeah, that's what I can say.
So I didn't give you guys this question ahead of time, nor did I prep you on this. But you're on the topic of learning. I would love to know, what did you both learn? But more importantly, what did you all learn about Blackness?
Hmm.
That's a good question. Wait a minute.
That's a question. I think for me, I learned that I think I went into the trip with a lot of like anger and like kind of like just like sadness about like, because like I had when I was younger, I had like kind of like gone on a trip similar. My mom and dad, like they took me to see some of these sites, and you know, when you're younger you don't really like understand the magnitude of like what you're seeing, but as like 17 years old, I'm going on this trip again, and it's just like I kind of have a new understanding of like what happened, like and I think that while I think a really powerful person that I listened to was Carolyn McKinstry, and the main message, like when she was talking to us, the main message she really portrayed was about like love, and how you know, in the 16th Baptist like Street Church, like, you know, all her friends had died, right? And even after that experience, she was able to come out of that experience with a sense of, you know, we need to like, you know, unify and like bring each other together, like with love, right? And she didn't let that harden her heart, but she really opened her heart, and it helped her open her heart. And she had to sit with the guy who bombed the church, and like, and I was like, she like had to sit there, and it's like, that's like crazy to me how she was still able to sit there and like, you know, have a conversation with him, even like after he had did that to her friends. And I don't know, that was really powerful for me. Yeah.
Ooh, love is hard. It's so simple. It sounds so simple. 4-letter word, but love is really hard.
Yeah.
And to be able to love someone who seemingly just hates you.
Yes.
And hates everything about your essence, but to rise above all of that and choose and learn to love.
Yes.
Yeah. What about you?
No, for sure. Well, I learned a lot, but I think one of the biggest things that I learned is how disappointed I am with the education system. Like we were sitting there and everybody was learning new things. It was beautiful because we were getting all this information, but it was just like, wow. Especially as an African American, I was like, I did not know this much about my history, and it is so unfortunate because it's American history, yet we don't know that. And I was just like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna have to, even like when I got back from the trip, we then had our civil rights conversations in school, and I had already known everything that they were gonna say. And I was like, there is just so much that needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
That's not. And I think also something that I learned very much is gratitude, and gratitude for being where I am now. And I think this trip really helped me understand not exactly everything that was put into where I got, because I don't think I will ever fully understand that, which is a good thing I feel in my head, but kind of like some of the things that my ancestors had to go through to get me to where I am. So now I'm in class, and I'm happy to be in class because they didn't get that opportunity, you know, like I stand in those rooms and I stand in them tall because they also didn't get that opportunity. And I think that's just something that really helped, that really like put in perspective. Like Maya Angelou has this quote, "Come in as one, stand as 10,000. And I think that was put into place with me once I got back. I'm not alone. I'm my ancestor here, and they're, you know, happy and rooting for me, and I'm doing things like this, and, you know, yeah.
Yeah, it's like we're living our ancestors' wildest dreams.
Yes.
Who would have thought
Yes,
that
for
we'd
sure.
be here today? Who would have thought that we have these opportunities? That who would have thought that in spite of all of it, all of the trauma and the hurt and the pain, like yet still I rise.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So when you think about kind of the main players in the civil rights movement, obviously everyone knows the Rosa Parks and the MLKs and the Malcolm X's of the world, but there were so many unsung heroes that we don't know the names of. Is there a leader or an individual that you learned about on this trip whose story kind of inspires you and kind of sparked something on the inside of you?
Oh my gosh, Fannie Lou Hamer.
Oh my gosh.
Fannie Lou Hamer. I had heard her name before, but it wasn't until the trip in which I learned all the amazing, scary things that she did. But she was just so fearless and it was so beautiful. She like went on public television and openly gave everyone her address because she knew that they were going to come find her. And I just felt like, wow. Wow, this woman is wow. So I think, she's just, there's so many people though.
Yes, definitely. Fannie Lou Hamer, but also like Daisy Bates.
Yeah.
I learned so much about her and like her strength. Like she literally owned like her own newspaper with her husband, and like they like had the courage to like, you know, write controversial stuff that like that could honestly get them like killed, but like they wrote it because they wanted to control like their own narrative. They wanted to like educate and like uplift our community, and they sacrificed like themselves and like their, you know, safety in order to do that through their newspaper. So I thought that was really powerful. Yeah.
Especially just learning about the history of Black women in general in the civil rights movement, because it's not talked about enough, but they played such a humongous role in getting us to where we are now.
Yeah.
Especially as a Black woman, I was like, yes, you know? So, yeah.
Yes. So thinking about that in the context of being a Black woman and learning about all of these stories of amazing Black women who had the courage to speak up and speak out and do something differently. What does it mean to you both to kind of carry on their legacy? What does that look like for you?
I think like for me, that kind of looks like, you know, executing excellence in all that I do, right? I think that like, you know, Black women are like literally magic, right? We're like so powerful. Not to be like, no,
it's
true. But I'm going to say that like, just like, you see all these women and like they're at the forefront of like the civil rights movement, and like we only talk about like, I mean,
Rosa Parks.
We talk about Rosa Parks, but also like, we're the main people who talk MLK and Malcolm X, and like that's kind of like the main people we talk about when talking about the civil rights. But there's so many like, if it wasn't for the Black women that were in those spaces and just like encouraging and leading, then we would not, I feel like we wouldn't really be here where we are today. So just like that lesson of like just being excellent in all that I do, just like honor them and honor like what they did. So
Yeah, kind of like how I was saying earlier, just to stand tall in the spaces that I am in now, especially being in like predominantly white spaces, to take up all of that space, you know, and to make sure that my voice is heard, and to really use the platform that the people before me built, and to use those resources and to use them well. Yeah.
I think to your point around failing of the education system and teaching American history, which totally entails Black history. Black history is American history in and of itself. Thinking about all of the things that we aren't taught, and how much of our history gets erased, and how much of our history is not shared to empower us to hear those stories of like, Black women did all of this? Like, of course I can. Like, it really impacts your perception of self if all you hear about in your history is you were a slave. Like, that's what you gave the slaves. It's like, can I get a little bit more? Like, can I learn more about the Fannie Lou Hamers and like learn more about other leaders who stepped up for courage? And so thinking about kind of this whole journey when it comes to journeying across the South, and this kind of increasingly divisive undivided world we live in. What parallels did you see between what you experienced and journeyed through in the civil rights journey to today? What kind of similarities do you see and experience?
I think so there's so many parallels, right? Like literally the stuff that was happening from 60 years ago, like we see it's so like permeated through our society today, right? And I think that the goal of that time was to make African Americans feel inferior to white people. Like that was like the violence that we experienced in the past. Like it's the goal is was to establish a superiority to Black people, and I think that we see that today with just even basic things like the stereotypes. We are told as Black people, we're told that we're lazy, or we're told that we're aggressive or angry, but it's we see the parallel with it during the civil rights movement and going on this journey. I think that there was so much birthed from we were so peaceful in how we approached the civil rights movement with all that we had gone through and all that we had endured. Just the peace that we had, and that we would march, do just the marches, and we would have the pastors and the these different leaders come and encourage us, and they would speak. And I think that they try to tell us these stereotypes today, how we're aggressive, or how we're angry, or how we're lazy, but it's we've done so much for this country. We've done so much to get where we are today, and it's I don't think that we can even be seen as inferior for all our history and all our culture that we have built just from the past. So yeah, I think that was a really big parallel that I saw. I'm wow, they try to tell us these stereotypes when they're not even close to true based on my history. So
and so feeling empowered to learn the history.
Yes.
That's not the case.
Yeah, no, for sure, about the learning for the history, and especially the erasure of the culture that you were talking about, and kind of how they don't want us to know about our history. And I think what comes to mind specifically is gentrification, and how easily so many cultures and communities can be just washed away. And that's what really that's what I was thinking about on the trip a lot, and still now I know a lot of places in San Francisco, Fillmore, Jack London Square in Oakland. I could name so many streets and so many cultures that are slowly being moved to Antioch or places like that. Yeah.
True. Yeah, it's very true. So what does progress look like?
Acknowledgement. I think that's the first start of it, is to acknowledge that there's progress that needs to be done. And so I think also that is something that I found really important to do now, because back in the day, they did not get to do that. Even just speaking out about one thing could easily get you killed. And so I think using your voice is such an important platform for you to be able to use now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think, I don't know, I think progress looks I think so often we talk about civil rights, right? I think that a big thing that I learned on this trip, that Martin Luther King stood for really economic equity. And I think that at least going on this trip, I think that progress would really stand for economic equity in kind of bridging the wealth gap that has been created from what we endured. So I think that that would be what progress looks like, is seeing more Black people in positions of power, and just having generational wealth, which was stolen from us from what we endured 400 years ago, and even 60 years ago. Just seeing it would look progressing economically, I think. Yeah.
That's also important.
Yes.
Too. That is so important.
Yeah.
We want to have some equity and equality when it comes to the economic advantage, and even small things such as like home ownership.
Yes.
There's extreme disparities in Black home ownership rates versus white home ownership rates versus or Asian home ownership rates. Like Black people have the lowest home ownership rates across the country. And so there's so many things where we are, I don't want to say lagging behind, but there's so many areas where we have so much room to grow and evolve and progress in. And so, yeah, I think progress definitely starts with acknowledgement for sure of like, there is a gap, acknowledging there are some differences, acknowledging that this is a problem. We should put some effort and attention and finances behind it, but also it is having some economic equality to sometimes eradicate some of these disparities.
Yeah.
And so thinking through some of these civil rights leaders that we call today, but they were just teenagers back when they stood up and had some courage to step up and speak out. They weren't adults who studied this, or they did not get a master's degree in organizational change. They did not have any formal education or training on studying and researching this. Obviously, they had the systems and structures and teaching to train them in these situations, but for them to just step up as 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, not far off from how old you guys are. What, for you now, what does activism look like today in 2024? And what role do you think young people play in kind of that progress?
I honestly think that we are the future. Like, young people are the future, right? And I think that back in the day, like, I think that everyone understood like how important, how integral like young people were to the movement. Like, Martin Luther King was only 26 years old when he became like the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, right? And they put him on the forefront originally to be kind of like a scapegoat, because they whatever happened that went wrong, it would like, fall on him. But he ended up like really like leading the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and even like with COFO, right? Like, you see leaders like Bob Moses, and you see how like, because of like what they did, like they like the movement is where it is today, right?
Yeah.
So I think like as young people now, I think like social media really is like a big part of our lives, right? And like everyone on social media has like, platforms that we can use for like good, but it's like we can use it either like for good or evil. And I feel like as like young people, we should use it for good to like Leah was saying, bring acknowledgement and awareness to like what is going on, or like even just like it could be like a simple post that could really just like bring like a conversation and start a conversation. So I think that that's like a big part of like what activism looks like in 2024, is using social media and platforms to really advocate for like what you believe.
Also, I feel like something that we saw back then and still now is that passion from youth to really see change. Because like, even if we think about now and how like voting isn't very like, there's not a lot of voting rights for specifically young people, like that is 100% our future. And so whatever everyone is voting on is going to directly impact us at some point. But I think I really think that passion is something that the youth really brought, and still now, like, we have that ability that if we're passionate about something and we want to see change, we make it happen, and I really love our generation for that, and not really being afraid to say what needs to be said, even if it hurts a few feelings, Yeah.
It's the ability to kind of speak out, and speak out against injustice and speak up for what you think is right. And I think in this world now, there is so much to speak up and speak out against. And I think it is really important to continue to use your voice and not be silenced, and share your experiences and your stories with others. So thank you for that. We're going to get ready to take some audience questions. And so for those who are viewing online, feel free to write your question in the chat. And then those in the audience, you can write your question down on the papers that are in your seat, or we will also be passing a microphone around to ask live questions. So get your questions going. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll take some audience questions. So my question that I have is, if you could speak directly to a civil rights icon from the past after this journey, what would you want to tell them or ask them?
That's a good question.
I think that like something really powerful that Elizabeth Eckford, she was part of the Little Rock Nine. When we were sitting and talking with her, she was talking about how like she, she really didn't ask to be like kind of like the leader that she like was made to be. Like she was talking about how she was a normal person. Like even after that happened, she was saying how she had become like a bank clerk or like a parole officer and stuff like that. And I just thought it was interesting how like, because of the circumstances, like that was kind of like the role she was put into, but she really was never asked for that. And I think I asked her something about like, what would she like change or something like that. And she was talking about how she doesn't know if she would like, do like what she did, right? Like going back, like she experienced so much violence going to the Central High, and it's like she doesn't know if she would have, gone to the high school and stuff. So I think that like I would honestly ask like a lot of leaders like kind of like would they have like seeing like seeing the after effects of like what they did, like would they, or like even like Medgar Evers, like what he did with just like being a really integral part of the NAACP. It's like in response to that, he put his family in jeopardy, right? And he ended up dying like at his house. So it's like, would you do what you did knowing like what was going to happen after you did it? So I think I would ask like a lot of them that question.
It's really essentially kind of asking, was it worth it?
Yeah, like, was it worth exactly?
Ooh, that's a heavy question. That's a heavy question. It's a good one.
Yes.
No, for sure. I think really what comes to mind is where we are now and how I feel like we've taken some great steps ahead, but also like if we're thinking about like affirmative action and how that's not there anymore. Even if we go to Roe v. Wade, I would want to ask like, do you feel like we are going in the right direction right now as a society?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a heavy one.
No, for sure.
Ooh, that's a heavy one. Okay. Ooh, I don't know about that. I don't know about the answer to that. Are we going in the right direction? What is the right direction?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I have my first audience question. Thank you to this audience member. There's three on here. So the first one is, what else did Fannie Lou Hamer do? Could you share just a little bit more about her and her story? I don't know if people have context into the great work that she did.
Yeah. Trying to see.
A lot of stories. So
Yeah.
one of our trip attendees said something. Do you want to say it one more time?
Well, she was an organizer. Her life was
Getting you a microphone, yes.
She was an organizer. Her life was threatened, yet she led the Mississippi Alternative Delegates at the Democratic Convention that I almost went to. But my parents wouldn't let me go because there were too many birthdays.
What? Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Second question here. How do you acknowledge your anger?
Oh. That's a good question. I think like for me, like I acknowledge it by participating in activities that like just like put me in a position to lead. I think I feel like I don't know, that's like I don't know if that's like the normal way you respond, but I think that like, you know, anger, like I feel like it fluctuates, right? Like, you know, being in a predominantly a lot of predominantly white spaces. I live in Arizona, so we were like one of the last people to like one of the last people to make MLK Day a day, right? Like they would not make it a day. So so being in those predominantly white spaces my whole life, I feel like, you know, as like the only Black girl, it's like you have to be the greatest in that space. You have to be able to lead. And I think that I think I acknowledge the anger by like choosing to, you know, go against what people, like the stereotypes people have in their head of me, or like what they may think. Like I feel like I acknowledge it by like participating in activities that normally Black girls aren't seen as participating in, or like I really am interested in engineering, and I feel like a lot of Black women aren't in that like aren't in that field. So I feel like I like kind of like go against the grain a little bit in a way to acknowledge it. But I think that also just like reading helps me a lot. It really grounds me to like read about my history and like just write what like I think like throughout the whole trip, this journey, I like was writing, right? I was writing like about my experiences, or like what I was thinking in that moment. I even like called my mom and I was like, Mom, like I have to like talk to you about like what's going on, right? Just like to like release like those feelings and acknowledge like what I'm feeling, and then not seeing anger as a negative emotion, right? It's an emotion that naturally would come with what like we're hearing and the just horrible things we're hearing, right? So I think that just like letting it be, but then using that anger to fuel me in like my endeavors. So I think that is how I acknowledge it personally. What do you think, Leah? How do you acknowledge
Powerful.
it?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the writing.
Yes.
I was writing a lot, and I like after that I started to get into poetry a little bit more.
Yeah.
And definitely expressing that through more creative fields, but I think also just like talking about it helped a lot. Like I just like it didn't matter like what the conversation was going. I'd be like, did you know?
Yes.
I was always telling people information and to kind of like share that kind of understanding of like where I am and like why I was feeling the way I was feeling.
Yes.
Because if anybody was hearing the things that we were hearing on that trip, they would be angry too. Yeah. So that definitely,
Yeah, I think that's, it's a really great question. So thank you to whoever posed that question, acknowledging your anger, because honestly, every time I learn about anything in regards to the civil rights movement or even slavery, I'm so sorry, but sometimes it really makes me strong. My mom doesn't like me using the word hate. It makes me strongly dislike white people sometimes because it is so disheartening to hear the experiences and the hate and the just disregard for human life that one could have to someone simply because of their skin color. And I don't even, I know I'm not strong enough to live through the civil rights movement and be hosed down and have dogs chasing after me and to have to sit at the back of the bus and be spit on and do all. I couldn't do it. I really could not do it. And it does make me angry, and it makes me so sad simply because of someone's mere existence that you could just be this hated. And I think it is really important to not let that anger consume you because what is it going to do? It's not going to do anything. You're just going to be a sitting duck, stagnant, and it's going to eat you up on the inside. But I really loved both of your answers around transforming that into something good and letting that be the fuel to help you to achieve more, to make you just do something outside of your comfort zone, because what a privilege it is that we get to do these things. What a privilege it is that we get to be in these spaces. And going back to that statement of love, how important it is and how hard it is to just love and forgiveness and just pushing past that and knowing that it's not a reflection of you and that their hate has nothing to do with you. And it's like, that's hard. And that's still kind of the weight and the burden that so many Black people have to deal with today.
And the hate is birthed out of fear, like fear of like the unknown, fear of like like just like the melanin in our skin. Like I just think like, I don't know, like I feel like if people could use like the fear of others in like, you know, better ways than like hating them, like not letting that fear turn to hate, but, you know, having questions or like getting to know the person, I feel like that would really transform like our society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brene Brown has this quote. She says, "You can't hate up close." And I think that is so important. Even in the photo from the Little Rock Nine, she became friends with the woman who was yelling at her and spitting on her.
Yeah.
And thinking about, if you can't hate up close, it takes coming close to someone to really learn about them. You're a daughter too. Oh, you're a sister. Oh, you have a cousin, and oh, you're a mom, or whatever title and role that you wear. You realize we are so much more alike than we are different. Like we are so alike, and really having that opportunity to sit across the table and have and engage in these dialogues, you really find there is like the shared humanity, and there is that human decency and love still there when we have an opportunity to push past the fear and move forward. Okay, so a question for YouTube. Thank you, YouTube questioner, for your question. We appreciate it. It says, what other enlightening destinations would you like to travel to?
I think for me, I would love to travel to Nigeria. I'm Nigerian and Jamaican, so I would like, I don't know, I really haven't been able to like travel there.
That, yeah.
So I would just really love to like get more connected to my culture and just really like, you know, meet like a lot of my family and stuff like that. A lot of like, I have like so many aunts and uncles and cousins, and just be able to just like immerse in the culture for like a good like couple weeks or something. Like that. Yeah.
Go back home.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, this is a little random, but I think I would really love to go to Cuba. And this is partly because I recently just started to get into Buena Vista Social Club. So I've been playing that. I bought it on vinyl a while ago. But also just like to see Black influence all over the world is just something that I've thought about spending my life just traveling the world and seeing that, because it really is everywhere. So, yeah.
We are everywhere.
We are everywhere.
We have influenced everything. Culture is Black culture.
Yeah.
Okay, so question from the audience again. Thank you, audience. Have your schools given you an opportunity to share the experience of this trip with other students? I do want to caveat that one of your schools gave you class credit for missing. They missed a full week of school. They got class credit for it, which is good. But did they give you an experience to share?
You can go first.
For me, that was my school. So my teacher, shout out to Miss Carr.
Hi, Miss Carr.
She ended up, I like talked to her about like, you know, the experience, and she ended up like, the assignments that I've missed, she's like, hey, if you are able to like, you know, give a presentation and present like, you know, what you learned on this trip, like I'll give you that full credit back of like those assignments. So it was really great. I got to present to my class, and I think like I did get really emotional just presenting, you know, what I learned. And it is scary, like presenting in front of your peers, especially people your own age. It's like such a different experience than like presenting in front of like, I don't know, you guys, like, I feel like,
not her peers.
I feel like teenagers are definitely a little bit more judgmental, but I think that, like, being in that AP Lit class and being able to, like, you know, give that slideshow and presentation about, like, what happened, I think that it may have, like, you know, sparked some conversation. Like, some people, like, asked me some questions afterwards, like, you know, what happened from that experience. So yeah, it was really great, like, to be able to share that with people like my age.
My school, I didn't get to do a presentation, unfortunately, but I did talk to my teachers, and I ended up also like getting the things that I missed kind of like exempt if I wrote about it. So I wrote a lot about it, and I also still talked a lot about it afterwards. I was like, you guys are gonna hear this, like it or not. And so yeah.
I love that. Okay, another question from the audience. Thank you, audience, for the questions. So, appreciate your bright smiles, of course. Thank you for your vulnerability and Black girl joy. Thank you, Cinnamon Girl and the California Commonwealth Club, for this life-affirming opportunity for you all. So the question is, what do you plan to study at university, and how has this experience shaped your future career goals?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Do you want to go first?
No, you can go, girl.
Okay. Okay, so I'm still kind of trying to figure out exactly what I want to do, but I think for college, I want to major in international business and minor in cultural anthropology.
Yes, cultural anthropology.
Or the other side is to just like end up going up in the levels of education and getting a PhD in cultural anthropology and maybe becoming a professor. Not quite sure, but I think just like after this trip, I was like, there's that cultural piece. I've always really loved studying different cultures, but learning about my different culture as well, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is it.
But yeah. I think for me, I'm graduating this year. but I think that I want to go into either biomedical engineering or marine biology. And I was having some really good conversations with Mr. Carl, just like about that field. But I don't know, like STEM is like such like a interesting field, right? Because I feel like it's like, I don't know, it's really hard. It was getting hard, right? And I feel like this trip kind of like encouraged me to keep going, because I was like maybe I want to do something different, but it's like I do have such a love for like engineering and like learning about the inner workings of things. So I think that this trip definitely, like seeing how these people before me were able just to do anything, I was like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it too. So it allowed me to like give me a little push to encourage me to keep going with that. Yeah,
that's important. Yeah. Oh, yes. Educated woman already. I love to see it. I want to just make space for anyone in the audience. If you want to ask a live question, we have a microphone. If you raise your hand, Christina will pass around the microphone. Otherwise, we have one question from YouTube, and then I have a final question if there are none from the live audience. But the question from YouTube says, has any of your writing been included in I Am the Dream or I Am the Change? This must be a Cinnamon Girl related question, because I Am the Dream and I Am the Change are parts of the books that the writing cohort publishes, and those are the titles of the book. So have you all been published authors in either I Am the Dream or I Am the Change?
Yes, I have.
Yes, published author.
I had the chance to be able to write kind of like a historical like fiction story, and then I had the chance to write like a lot of poetry. So yeah, that experience being in the writing cohort was just so amazing. So yeah.
I'm going through that experience right now, actually, with
soon to be published author.
Soon to be published. But I'm planning on publishing some of my poetry, so yeah.
Yes. Okay. So my last and final question for you all. Thinking about some of the Negro spirituals and kind of the Black national anthem, or even just the basic song, not basic by any means, but the song, We Shall Overcome Someday. Have those songs taken on a new meaning for you?
I think at least like for me, right, my little brother, so like that song, he would like sing the national like, you know, Black anthem song in his like classroom in the morning, right? And I don't know, like being in like this experience, like I started like playing the song, and I don't know, I just want to like hear him sing it and stuff like that, and it just kind of gave me a new meaning, because I'm like, wow, like this song is like so just beautiful, and like I would just like listen to it more. And like he would just like, you know, sing it in the mornings, like as I'm like taking him to school.
So
and it was just so like it was so cute just to like, I don't know, it just gave me a new meaning to like like this song, because like I don't know, it was so like encouraging and uplifting just like to hear it, like, you know, Tasha Cobb sing the song and him sing along. Like it was just so like cool to like to see that. So yeah.
No, for sure. I think I knew these songs and I sang them, but after this experience, I started to sing them a little louder. Or maybe not a little louder, much louder. Much louder, because I understood everything, like the lyrics of those songs. And I remember on the last day, the last night, we all held hands and we sang, and I got so emotional. And so now I'm like sitting here, I'm like, okay, Leah, don't cry, like don't mess up your makeup. It's just like those songs hold so much weight.
Yeah.
So much weight. And I think I am just, speechless. Yeah.
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 Okay. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing your stories and just so vulnerably being able to tell your story and help all of us experience the trip through your eyes, and experience what progress and hope looks like and what we can hope for and expect for tomorrow, the future doctors and you said marine biologists?
Or engineer, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Miss Engineer, of the world will bring. And our future is so bright. Our future is going in the right direction with you two at the forefront. And with you two sharing your stories and being incredibly brave and bold to participate in experiences like this, but also sit on these forums to share your perspectives. So my hope for you both is that you just keep going in your Black girl excellence, and the world is your oyster. There's so many possibilities, and I'm excited to see all that you do. And on behalf of everyone in the room, I just want to thank you for sharing and for just showing up so beautifully tonight. You did wonderful, and we are honored to be in your presence. So thank you.